The diamond ring, 3 carats of empty promises, slid off easier than Candace Vaughan expected. She placed it on the marble kitchen counter where Lance Harrison would find it, right next to the keys to the house she'd never truly felt was home. Her hands didn't shake. After 5 years of being invisible in her own marriage, after 5 years of sleeping next to a man who touched her like an obligation and spoke to her like an inconvenience, after 5 years of shrinking herself to fit into the narrow space he'd carved out for the wife, her hands were finally steady. Hey, beautiful souls. I'm so glad you're here with me today for a story about a woman who stopped waiting for love to find her and started demanding the love she deserved. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love connecting with you all across the world. And listen, if you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is all about stories of resilience, redemption, and the kind of love that heals. You don't want to miss what happens next, trust me. Now back to Candace. The February rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse. Lance's penthouse, bought with Lance's money, decorated to Lance's taste. Candace had merely existed here, a beautiful ghost haunting rooms that had never asked for her input. She'd spent 5 years as an accessory, a prop, the elegant black woman on his arm at charity galas who knew when to smile, when to speak, and more importantly, when to stay silent. But props don't have heartbeats. And Candace's heart, the one she'd thought died somewhere around year 3 when she discovered the first affair, was suddenly, inexplicably alive again. Pounding. Insistent. Demanding she choose herself for once. She picked up her suitcase. Just one. Everything that truly mattered fit into one bag because she'd stopped accumulating things that reflected who she was years ago. When you're married to a man who criticizes your taste, your choices, your very existence, you learn to want less. To be less. Not anymore. The door to Lance's study was cracked open. Through it, she could hear his voice, low and intimate, the same tone he'd used with her once upon a time, back before the ink dried on their marriage certificate, back when she'd still believed in the fairy tale. "Baby, I told you she doesn't suspect anything," Lance murmured, his words punctuated by a laugh that made Candace's stomach turn. "She's too busy playing the perfect wife." "Yeah, I'll tell her soon. Maybe. Or maybe I'll just keep things exactly as they are. Why mess up a good arrangement?" The woman on the other end said something that made Lance laugh again. Candace should have felt devastated. Instead, she felt free. She didn't confront him. Didn't throw open the door for a dramatic showdown. She'd learned that men like Lance didn't change when confronted, they just got better at hiding. And she was done performing in his theater. She walked out. The elevator ride down 43 floors felt like descending from a prison tower. Each floor a year, a month, a day she'd never get back. But also each floor a layer of pretense falling away, revealing the woman underneath, the one she'd forgotten existed. Her phone buzzed as she stepped into the rain. A text from her best friend Amelia, "You did it." Candace typed back with wet fingers, "I'm out." 3 dots appeared immediately, then, "Come to me. I have wine, tissues, and a lawyer's number." Candace slid into the waiting Uber, her clothes already soaked, her carefully flat-ironed hair curling in the humidity. She caught her reflection in the window, mascara smudging, lipstick faded, and saw something she hadn't seen in 5 years. She saw herself smiling. But what Candace didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as the car pulled away from the only life she'd known as Mrs. Harrison, was that walking away was just the beginning. Because in 6 months, she'd be happier than she'd ever imagined possible. In 6 months, she'd be married to a man who looked at her like she hung the moon and called her name like a prayer. And in 6 months, Lance Harrison would be desperate, dangerous, and determined to destroy everything she'd built. The question wasn't whether she'd survive what was coming. The question was whether Lance would survive what he'd awakened, because the woman leaving his penthouse in the rain wasn't the same one who'd walked into it 5 years ago. That woman had been soft, hopeful, eager to please. This woman? This woman was done being anyone's second choice. If you're loving this story so far, drop a comment below and let me know. Have you ever had to walk away from something that was killing your spirit? I read every single comment, and your stories inspire me. And please, if you haven't subscribed, do it now. We're just getting started, and you won't believe where this journey takes Candace. Now, let's talk about what happened next. Amelia Wilson Bullen's apartment in Brooklyn was everything Lance's penthouse wasn't: warm, cluttered with life, filled with mismatched furniture that somehow worked perfectly together. The kind of place where you could breathe without worrying about disturbing the aesthetic. Candace stood in the doorway dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floor, her single suitcase at her feet, and for the first time in hours, the adrenaline that had carried her out of that building began to fade. "Oh, honey." Amelia didn't ask questions. She simply pulled Candace into her arms, and that's when the dam broke. Candace cried the way she hadn't let herself cry in 5 years. Deep, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere primal, somewhere she'd locked away the day she realized her marriage was a beautiful lie. Amelia held her through all of it, one hand rubbing circles on her back, murmuring the kinds of things that don't mean anything and mean everything. "I've got you. You're safe. You're home." When the tears finally subsided, Amelia guided her to the overstuffed couch, the one Candace had helped her pick out 7 years ago, back when Candace had still been allowed to have opinions about furniture. "Wine or tea?" Amelia asked. "Tequila," Candace answered, her voice raw. Amelia grinned. "Now that's the Candace I remember." While Amelia rummaged in the kitchen, Candace looked around the apartment and felt something crack open in her chest. Photos everywhere. Amelia's family, friends, snapshots from college when Candace and Amelia had been roommates with the world at their feet. There was one of Candace at her graduate school graduation, master's degree in architectural design, eyes bright with ambition. She'd wanted to design buildings that made people feel something. Spaces that told stories. Instead, she'd spent 5 years as decoration in someone else's story. "You're thinking too loud," Amelia said, handing her a generous pour of Patron. "I can hear your brain spiraling from here." Candace accepted the glass. "How did I let it get this bad, Amelia?" "No." Amelia's voice was firm as she sat down beside her. "We're not doing that. We're not blaming you for his choices. For his cruelty. I stayed though. For 5 years I stayed. You want to know what I think?" Amelia didn't wait for an answer. "I think you stayed because you were raised by a woman who taught you that love means sacrifice. That good wives endure. That black women especially have to be strong, hold it together, keep the family intact no matter what it costs us." Candace's throat tightened. Her mother had died 6 months before she married Lance. Breast cancer, brutal and fast. In her final days, she'd held Candace's hand and said, "I'm so glad you found a good man, baby. Someone to take care of you." Shirley Vaughn had meant well. She'd grown up in a different time, survived a different kind of struggle. She'd wanted security for her daughter, stability. She'd seen Lance's wealth, his pedigree, his prestigious position at the investment firm, and thought, "This man will protect her from the hardships I faced." She hadn't lived long enough to see that there are different kinds of hardships. That money doesn't prevent cruelty. That sometimes the most dangerous place for a woman is in a marriage where she's slowly disappearing. "Mom would have told me to work it out," Candace whispered. "Your mom loved you. But she was wrong about Lance. And Candace." Amelia waited until Candace met her eyes. "You're allowed to choose differently than she would have. You're allowed to want more than survival. You're allowed to want joy." But the word felt foreign in Candace's mouth, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. "I don't even know who I am anymore," Candace admitted. "Everything I liked, everything I wanted. He had an opinion about it. My clothes were too bright, then too dull. My laugh was too loud. My ideas about design were cute, but not practical. My friends were—" She glanced at Amelia. "He hated that I was close to you." "Because I never bought his bullshit," Amelia said flatly. "He wanted you isolated. Classic playbook. Make you doubt yourself, cut you off from anyone who reminds you of your worth, until his version of reality is the only one you believe." Candace took a long drink. "I had a portfolio, you know. Before. Designs for a community center in Harlem, a reimagined library system for underfunded neighborhoods. I wanted to create spaces that gave back. You still can. I haven't designed anything in 4 years. I don't even know if I remember how." Muscle memory, Amelia said softly. Like riding a bike. Like remembering you're a badass who graduated top of her class and had 3 firms trying to recruit her before she chose love over ambition. Look how that turned out. No. Amelia's hand covered hers. Look how it's turning out. Present tense. You walked away, Candace. Do you know how many women don't? How many stay until they've completely vanished? You found yourself in there somewhere. You saved yourself. Candace wanted to believe her. God, she wanted to believe that leaving was enough, that the hard part was over. He's going to be furious when he finds the ring, she said quietly. Let him be furious. You'll be gone. He'll try to, Candace stopped, unsure how to articulate the dread pooling in her stomach. Try to what? Control the narrative. Make me the villain. He's good at that, making people see things his way. Amelia's expression hardened. Then we get ahead of it. Tomorrow, you're calling that lawyer I told you about. Simone Rothstein. She's a shark, specializes in high-net-worth divorces, and she doesn't play. Then you're going to start rebuilding. Your portfolio, your career, your life. You're going to remind yourself and everyone else who the hell Candace Vaughan is. Candace Vaughan. Not Candace Harrison. She'd kept her maiden name professionally, one small rebellion Lance had tolerated because it looked progressive to his colleagues. I don't have much money, Candace said. I had my own account before we married, but I haven't worked in 3 years. It's mostly depleted. You can stay here as long as you need. And before you argue, Amelia held up a hand. This isn't charity. This is what people who love you do. We show up. We make space. We help you remember you're not alone. Tears pricked Candace's eyes again, but these felt different. Cleaner somehow. They sat in silence for a while, drinking tequila and listening to the rain. Outside, the city hummed with life, millions of people living their messy, complicated, beautiful lives. For 5 years, Candace had been separate from it, sealed in climate-controlled luxury that felt more like a tomb. Amelia? Yeah. Thank you for not giving up on me. Even when I stopped calling. When I made excuses not to see you. Amelia's eyes glistened. You're my sister. You don't give up on sisters. Candace's phone buzzed. Then again. And again. She didn't need to look to know it was Lance. He'd found the ring. Found her gone. And now the real storm was beginning. Don't answer it, Amelia said. I won't. But as the phone continued to vibrate with increasing frequency, Candace felt the first flutter of real fear. She'd left Lance Harrison. She'd walked out of his perfect prison. But men like Lance didn't let go easily. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice whispered that leaving might have been the easy part. What came next? The divorce, the disentanglement, the inevitable fight over dignity and truth that was going to test every ounce of strength she'd been rebuilding. Candace looked at her phone. 17 missed calls. 23 texts. She could see the preview of the last one without opening it. You're making a mistake you'll regret. We need to talk. Now. She turned the phone face down. Let him wait, she said and meant it. Tomorrow she'd face the war. Tonight she was just going to sit with her best friend and remember what it felt like to be seen, to be valued, to matter. Tonight she was going to practice being free. What would you do in Candace's situation? Would you respond to those texts or let him spiral? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to hear your perspectives. And if you're invested in Candace's journey, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single twist in this story. Simone Rothstein's office overlooked Central Park from the 48th floor, all glass and steel and the quiet confidence of a woman who'd made powerful men sweat. She was 50-something, sharp-featured, with silver hair cut in a precise bob and eyes that missed nothing. Tell me everything, she said, sliding a legal pad across the mahogany desk. And I mean everything. The affairs, the financial control, the emotional abuse. Don't downplay it. Don't protect him. Just truth. Candace spent 90 minutes unpacking 5 years of her life. With each revelation, Simone's expression grew harder, more focused. She took notes in sharp, efficient strokes. When Candace finished, Simone set down her pen. Here's where we are, she said. New York is an equitable distribution state, not community property. That means the court divides marital assets fairly, not necessarily equally. You were married 5 years, you gave up your career at his urging, you played the role he demanded. You're entitled to compensation for that. I don't want his money, Candace said automatically. I just want out. With respect, Ms. Vaughan, that's your trauma talking. You were financially abused. He controlled the accounts, the investments, made you dependent. You think not taking anything makes you noble. It doesn't. It makes you vulnerable. Simone leaned forward. Men like Lance Harrison use money as a leash. Even after divorce. If you leave with nothing, you're still on that leash. You're still at his mercy. The words hit like cold water. So what do? You fight. You document everything. You prepare for him to get ugly, because he will. Men who treat their wives as accessories don't handle rejection well. Simone paused. I need to ask, do you feel physically safe? Candace opened her mouth to say yes, then stopped. Did she? Lance had never hit her. Never raised a hand. But there had been moments, doors slammed near her head, objects thrown across rooms, his face inches from hers while he hissed about her inadequacies. Intimidation that stopped just short of violence. I don't know, she admitted. Then we get a restraining order. Preemptive. He's already blowing up your phone. That's harassment. It establishes a pattern. He'll say I'm being dramatic. That I'm. Let him say whatever he wants. Let him tell his side. We'll tell yours with documentation. Simone's smile was sharp as a blade. I'm very good at my job, Ms. Vaughan. And I don't lose. Candace left the office 2 hours later with the retainer agreement signed, a strategy in place, and something she hadn't felt in years, hope that someone was on her side. She was standing on the corner of 57th and Park, trying to hail a cab in the lunch hour chaos, when her phone rang. Not Lance this time, a number she didn't recognize. Against her better judgment, she answered. Candace Vaughan. A woman's voice, young and uncertain. Yes. I don't know if I should be calling. But I think you should know. About Lance. About, the woman's voice cracked. About me. Candace's heart stopped. Who is this? My name is Tessa. Tessa Moreno. I was. A shaky breath. I was sleeping with your husband. For 8 months. The ground seemed to tilt. 8 months. Not just a fling. Not just the woman she'd heard him talking to yesterday. Why are you calling me? Candace managed. Because he told me this morning that you left. That you walked out and abandoned him. He was crying, saying he never appreciated you, that he made a mistake. Tessa's laugh was bitter. But here's the thing. He's been telling me for 8 months that you two were basically over. That you stayed in separate bedrooms. That divorce was imminent. And I believed him because I'm 26 and stupid and I thought. Wait. Candace's mind reeled. He told you we slept in separate bedrooms? Yes. They'd shared a bed every night. Lance's arm thrown possessively over her waist, even as he grew more distant in every other way. She'd hated it toward the end. The false intimacy, the performance of marriage. That's a lie, Candace said flatly. Everything he told you was a lie. I know that now. I called because... Tessa hesitated. Because I thought you should know he's already rewriting history. He's telling people you were unstable, that you had some kind of breakdown. He's at lunch right now with his partners, playing the devastated husband. I only know because he texted me a photo from the restaurant, saying he can't eat, can't think, can't imagine life without you. Rage flooded Candace's system, hot and clarifying. Thank you for telling me, she said. I'm sorry. For what I did. I didn't know, I thought. You're not the villain here, Tessa. He is. She ended the call and immediately forwarded Tessa's contact information to Simone with a text. Mistress number 1 just called. Lance is already controlling the narrative. What do we do? The response came within seconds. We accelerate. I'm filing today. And I'm calling a friend. You need visibility, credibility. Trust me on this. Candace stood on the corner, people rushing past, the city indifferent to her crisis. She felt untethered, like she might float away or shatter. She needed to ground herself. to remember who she'd been before Lance. On impulse, she pulled up the address she'd saved years ago, the offices of Wilson and Associates, one of the architectural firms that had tried to recruit her after graduate school. Jonathan Wilson had told her the door was always open. That had been 6 years ago. She walked the 12 blocks, letting the cold November air sharpen her thoughts. The building was in the Flatiron District, a converted factory space with the kind of industrial chic design Candace had always loved. Exposed brick, massive windows, the bones of the old building honored in the new design. She stood outside for 5 minutes, fear warring with determination. Then she walked in. The receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I'm looking for Jonathan Wilson. My name is Candace Vaughan. He probably doesn't remember me, but—" "Candace Vaughan." A voice from behind her, warm and surprised. "No way." She turned. Jonathan Wilson looked exactly the same, early 40s, stylishly disheveled in that way architects pulled off, wearing expensive glasses and a grin. But it wasn't Jonathan who made Candace's breath catch. It was the man standing beside him. Tall, broad-shouldered, black, with close-cropped hair going silver at the temples and eyes that seemed to see straight through pretense to truth. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Candace's car used to, but he wore it like an afterthought, like the expensive clothes were just wrapping paper for something far more interesting underneath. "Evan, this is the designer I was telling you about," Jonathan said, gesturing excitedly. "The one whose thesis project on sustainable community spaces I showed you. Candace, this is Evan Maddox. He's funding our new project in the Bronx, affordable housing with integrated community design. It's exactly the kind of work you wanted to do." Evan Maddox extended his hand, and when Candace took it, she felt a jolt of something she couldn't name. His grip was warm, firm, respectful. "Ms. Vaughan," he said, and his voice was like bourbon, smooth, complex, warming. "Jonathan's been talking about your work for years. Said you were the one who got away." "I didn't know I was such a legend," Candace managed, hyper-aware that she probably looked like a disaster, eyes puffy from crying, hair still recovering from yesterday's rain, wearing Amelia's borrowed clothes. "Your thesis was brilliant," Jonathan said. "I kept a copy. Used some of your concepts in 3 different projects. Always meant to call and offer you a consulting credit, but—" He shrugged apologetically. "But I disappeared," Candace finished. "I got married and stopped designing." Something shifted in Evan Maddox's expression, a flicker of understanding, maybe recognition of a story he'd heard before. "Are you designing again?" he asked quietly. It was such a simple question. But the way he asked it, like her answer mattered, like she mattered, made Candace's throat tight. "I'm trying to," she said. "I'm rebuilding." The word hung in the air, heavier than she'd intended. Evan didn't look away. "Rebuilding is brave. Or necessary. Same things sometimes." Jonathan glanced between them, clearly sensing something but too polite to name it. "Listen, we're heading to a late lunch to go over the Bronx project. Why don't you join us? I'd love to get your perspective. No pressure, just food and shop talk. Like old times." Every instinct told Candace to decline, to run back to Amelia's apartment and hide. She was in no state for professional networking. Her life was imploding. She'd left her husband yesterday. But another voice, quieter, newer, whispered, "What if this is the door opening? What if you say yes?" "I would love that," she heard herself say. Evan Maddox smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Outstanding. I have a feeling this is going to be an interesting afternoon." He had no idea how right he was. Because as they walked toward the restaurant, as Candace felt the first fragile tendrils of her old self awakening, as she allowed herself to imagine that maybe she could have a career again, a purpose again. 3 blocks away, Lance Harrison sat in a different restaurant, spinning his narrative to anyone who would listen, his rage growing with every call Candace didn't answer. And in his pocket, a private investigator's card, given to him by a colleague who understood that sometimes you needed to know where your wife was, who she was with, what she was planning. The collision course was set. Candace just didn't know it yet. "Okay, real talk. Would you have joined them for lunch or played it safe? Drop a comment and let me know. This is where Candace's new life starts, but also where the danger really begins. If you're hooked, please subscribe. This story is about to get wild. The restaurant was a small Italian place in Greenwich Village, the kind with checkered tablecloths and waiters who'd worked there for decades. Nothing like the Michelin-starred establishments Lance had preferred, places where the food was architectural and the atmosphere sterile. Candace relaxed incrementally as Jonathan dove into the Bronx project, spreading preliminary sketches across the table between antipasti and bread. The problem with most affordable housing, he explained, gesturing with a breadstick, is that it's designed like we're doing poor people a favor. Utilitarian boxes. No community integration, no green space, no thought to how design impacts mental health and social cohesion. It's design as charity instead of design as dignity, Candace said, the words coming easily, muscle memory from a version of herself she'd thought was lost. Evan looked up sharply. Exactly. That's exactly it. Your thesis explored that concept, Jonathan said. You designed that community center with integrated tutoring spaces, a commercial kitchen for skills training, rooftop gardens. It wasn't just a building, it was an ecosystem. Candace felt heat rise to her cheeks. That was a long time ago. Student work. Student work that was ahead of its time, Evan said. He'd been quiet mostly, watching her with those penetrating eyes. Jonathan sent me your portfolio 6 months ago when I first started exploring this project. I've been looking at your community center design ever since. The way you created flexible spaces that could serve multiple purposes, the natural light optimization, the way you thought about foot traffic patterns to encourage organic interaction. He paused. It was inspired. Was, Candace echoed, the word bitter on her tongue. Is, Evan corrected gently. Inspiration doesn't disappear. It just waits. Their eyes met across the table, and Candace felt that jolt again. Recognition, connection, something that made her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Why did you stop? Jonathan asked, then immediately winced. Sorry, that's probably too personal. It's okay. Candace took a breath. I got married. My husband thought architecture was a nice hobby but not the practical career for a wife. He wanted me available for his schedule, his needs, his life. She heard the bitterness in her voice and tried to soften it. I made choices that seemed right at the time. And now? Evan asked. Now I'm getting divorced and trying to remember who I was before I became someone's accessory. The words came out rawer than she intended. She waited for the awkwardness, the polite subject change. Instead, Evan nodded slowly. I was engaged once. 10 years ago. She was from a certain kind of family, wanted a certain kind of life. I was building my company, working 18-hour days, investing in projects that didn't make sense to people who only understood profit margins. His smile was rueful. She gave me an ultimatum, her vision of our life or my work. I chose my work. Any regrets? Candace asked. Only that I didn't see sooner that someone who loves you doesn't make you choose between who you are and who they need you to be. The statement hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Jonathan, bless him, seemed to sense the moment needed breaking. So, Candace, hypothetically, if you were designing this Bronx project, what would you do differently than what you see here? He slid the sketches toward her. Candace hesitated. These were professional designs, probably done by Jonathan's team. Criticizing them felt presumptuous. I'm genuinely asking, Jonathan said. Your eye is different than mine. Show me what I'm missing. She studied the drawings. The buildings were beautiful in a conventional way, clean lines, efficient layouts. But you're thinking in buildings, she said slowly. Separate structures. But what if you thought in community? What if the spaces between the buildings mattered as much as the buildings themselves? She grabbed a napkin and a pen from her purse, began sketching quickly. The years fell away. Her hand remembered what her mind had tried to forget. See, if you angle this building 15 degrees and create a courtyard here, you get a protected outdoor space that feels safe, intimate. Add raised garden beds, community gardens where residents can grow food, build ownership. And here, she sketched rapidly. If you connect the buildings with covered walkways, you create weather-protected circulation that becomes social space. People linger in covered walkways. They talk. Community forms. She looked up to find both men staring at her. What? You just redesigned in 5 minutes what took my team 3 weeks, Jonathan said, something like awe in his voice. Evan was smiling. And this is why I invest in people, not just projects. Jonathan, she's consulting on this. Non-negotiable. I have a divorce to navigate, Candace protested. I don't have time. You don't have time not to, Evan interrupted gently. You need to rebuild your professional identity. You need income that's yours. And selfishly, we need your brain on this project. He named a consulting fee that made Candace's eyes widen. That's too much. It's market rate for someone of your caliber. Take it. Use it. Let it remind you what you're worth. Candace's phone buzzed. Then again. And again. She glanced down and felt ice flood her veins. 37 missed calls now. The texts had evolved from angry to pleading to threatening. We need to talk now. You can't just throw away 5 years. I know you're with someone. My guy saw you. Who the hell is he? Her hand trembled slightly as she turned the phone face down. Evan noticed. Of course he noticed. Everything okay? His voice was low, concerned. My husband, ex-husband, he's not taking the separation well. Is he dangerous? Evan's tone shifted, something protective underlying the question. I don't know. He's never been violent, but... She gestured helplessly at the phone. This isn't normal behavior. Do you have a lawyer? Yes. She's filing papers today. Good. And you're staying somewhere safe? With my best friend in Brooklyn. Evan pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'm texting you my number. Anytime, and I mean anytime, day or night. If you feel unsafe, you call me. Understood? You don't need to. I'm aware I don't need to. I'm choosing to. His eyes were steady on hers. I have resources. Security people on retainer. If your ex escalates, you don't handle it alone. Candace didn't know what to do with this kindness, this immediate, uncomplicated offer of protection from a man who'd known her for less than 2 hours. Why are you helping me? Evan considered the question seriously. Because I've seen what happens when powerful men feel entitled to control the women in their lives. My mother, he stopped, something painful crossing his face. Let's just say I learned young that standing by when someone needs help makes you complicit. The waiter arrived with their entrees, breaking the intensity of the moment. They shifted to lighter topics, Jonathan's obsession with vintage motorcycles, Evan's failed attempt to learn guitar during the pandemic, Candace's confession that she stress-baked and had once made 14 pies in a single weekend. But underneath the easy conversation, Candace felt something growing. An awareness of Evan Maddox that had nothing to do with his money or his power and everything to do with the way he listened like her words mattered. The way he asked follow-up questions about her design philosophy. The way his laugh was unguarded and real. The way he looked at her like she was already whole, not a broken thing that needed fixing. It terrified her. She'd left her marriage yesterday. Yesterday. She had no business feeling attraction, connection, possibility. And yet, as lunch wound down and Jonathan excused himself to take a call, Candace found herself alone with Evan at the table. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. Sure. Why architecture? What drew you to it originally? No one had asked her that in years. Lance had certainly never cared. I grew up in a neighborhood that was beautiful and broken, Candace said slowly. Row houses with good bones but years of neglect. Community centers that were just concrete boxes. I watched how the environment shaped people's sense of possibility. And I thought, what if we built spaces that told people they mattered? That their community deserved beauty and thoughtfulness, not just function. Design as dignity, Evan repeated her earlier phrase. Yes. And then you stopped. I married a man who thought my dreams were cute but impractical. I let him convince me that his version of reality was the only one that mattered. She met Evan's eyes. I'm not letting anyone do that again. Good. His smile was soft. The world needs what you have to offer, Candace Vaughan. Don't hide it anymore. Her phone erupted with a call. Not Lance this time, Simone Rothstein. I need to take this, she said apologetically. Of course. She stepped outside into the cold November afternoon. Simone. Papers are filed. Process server will deliver them to Lance at his office tomorrow morning. But Candace, Simone's voice was tight. I need you to be very careful. I got a call from a colleague who saw Lance this afternoon. He's asking around about private investigators. He's also been calling people in your social circle, telling them you had a breakdown. He's smearing me. So we get ahead of it. I've arranged an interview for you with Rebecca Wilson. She runs a lifestyle blog but also covers women's empowerment, divorce, rebuilding. She's sympathetic, has a huge platform. You tell your story first, on your terms. Control the narrative before he does. Candace's stomach churned. I've never been public about personal things. Which is why his version will stick if we don't counter it. Think about it. But think fast, she can see you tomorrow. Candace ended the call and stood on the sidewalk, watching people rush past. Somewhere in this city, Lance was plotting, spinning stories, trying to maintain control. But inside that restaurant was a man who just reminded her what respect looked like. What possibility felt like. She could hide, protect herself, stay small. Or she could fight. When she walked back inside, Evan was signing the check. He looked up, read something in her expression. What do you need? He asked simply. I need. Candace stopped, recalibrated. I need to tell my story before my ex-husband rewrites it. I need to be braver than I feel. And I need to remember that I'm not the villain in this, even though he's going to paint me as one. Evan stood, his presence solid and grounding. Then we make sure the truth gets heard. Whatever you need, a platform, resources, someone to vouch for your character, you have it. You don't even know me. I know enough. He held her gaze. I know you walked away from comfort to find yourself. I know your work is exceptional and your vision matters. And I know that men who try to destroy their ex-wives do it because they're terrified that without someone to diminish, their own inadequacy shows. It was the most accurate description of Lance that Candace had ever heard. Jonathan returned, oblivious to the tension. So, Candace, you in? Consulting on the project? She thought about her empty bank account, her uncertain future, the fact that 24 hours ago she'd been someone's invisible wife. I'm in, she said. And somewhere across the city, a process server printed out divorce papers with Candace's name on them, the first legal step toward freedom. While in his office, Lance Harrison stared at a photo his hired investigator had just sent. Candace, laughing, sitting across from a man in an expensive suit. His rage was a living thing, coiling and venomous. She was already moving on. Already replacing him. He would make her regret it. He would make them both regret it. This is getting intense. Drop a comment. Do you think Candace should do that public interview or keep things private? I want to hear your strategies. And listen, if you're not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We're building to something major, and you don't want to miss what happens when Lance gets those papers. The interview with Rebecca Wilson went live on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after Candace had walked out of Lance's penthouse. She'd agonized over every word, revised her answers a dozen times, terrified of sounding bitter or vindictive. But Rebecca had been skilled, empathetic, drawing out the story with questions that felt more like conversation than interrogation. The headline read, Architect Candace Vaughan on reclaiming her career after a marriage that required her silence. Candace had been careful. She hadn't named Lance, Simone's legal advice. She'd focused on her own journey, the slow erosion of self, the isolation, the moment she'd realized that surviving wasn't the same as living. She talked about walking away with one suitcase and rebuilding from nothing. She talked about finding her voice again through design. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By noon, the article had been shared 14,000 times. Comments flooded in, hundreds of women sharing their own stories of marriages that had diminished them, relationships that had required their silence, the courage it took to leave. Candace sat in Amelia's apartment, watching her phone explode with notifications, feeling exposed and terrified and strangely exhilarated. "You did it," Amelia said, reading over her shoulder. "You told the truth and look, you're not alone." But Candace's phone was also filling with other messages. From former friends, Lance's friends, really, people who'd taken his side without question. "I can't believe you'd air private business publicly. This is so disrespectful. Lance is devastated. How could you do this to him? There are two sides to every story, and this is clearly yours." And then at 2:37 p.m., Lance's response went live. He'd given his own interview to a major business publication, positioning himself as the blindsided husband whose wife had abandoned their marriage without warning, who'd refused to communicate or work on their problems, who'd run straight into the arms of a billionaire. The headline made Candace's blood run cold. Investment executive Lance Harrison speaks out after wife's public accusations. "I'm heartbroken by her betrayal." In it, Lance painted himself as the devoted husband who'd supported Candace's struggles with depression and anxiety, who'd encouraged her to pursue her interests but respected when she'd chosen to step back from architecture. He expressed shock and hurt at her decision to leave, claimed he'd been begging her to go to couples therapy for months. And then, the kill shot. "I've since learned she'd been meeting with Evan Maddox for weeks before she left me. I'm not saying there was an affair, but the timeline is certainly interesting. It's painful to realize that while I was trying to save our marriage, she was already planning her next chapter, with a billionaire." The implication was clear, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Within an hour, the narrative shifted. Social media lit up with speculation. Had Candace been cheating? Had she left Lance for Evan's money? Was her whole finding herself story just cover for trading up? Candace read the comments with shaking hands, watching her truth get twisted in real time. Of course she left. She found a richer man. Gold digger vibes. "I knew there was more to this story." Her phone rang. "Simone. Do not respond," the lawyer said immediately. "Do not engage. This is what he wants, a public fight where he controls the narrative. He's calling me a gold digger. He's implying I had an affair. I know. And it's actionable if we can prove malice, but right now. I met Evan 3 weeks after I left Lance. 3 weeks. And it wasn't romantic, it was professional." Even as she said it, Candace felt the lie in the words. Because yes, it had been professional. But it had also been something else, something growing between them that she hadn't wanted to name. "The truth will come out," Simone said. "But not in a tabloid war. Let me handle this legally. You focus on your work, your healing. Don't let him bait you into his game." Candace ended the call and sat in the silence of Amelia's apartment, feeling everything she'd been building start to crack. Her phone buzzed. "Evan. I saw Lance's interview. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. Can we talk?" She shouldn't. She should maintain distance, protect herself, not give Lance's accusations any credence. But she needed to hear a friendly voice. "Just, please." They met at Evan's office in Tribeca, a converted warehouse with soaring ceilings and walls of windows overlooking the Hudson. It was after hours. The space was empty, quiet. Evan opened the door himself, and the concern in his eyes nearly undid her. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I'm sorry that knowing me has made this harder for you. This isn't your fault. Lance would have found some way to discredit me regardless." Evan gestured her inside. His office was nothing like Lance's had been, no mahogany and intimidation. Instead, drafting tables covered with project plans, bookshelves crammed with architecture and design books, comfortable furniture that invited conversation. "Can I get you anything? Coffee, water, something stronger? Honestly, I just needed to be somewhere that doesn't feel like the walls are closing in." He nodded, led her to a leather couch near the windows. The city sparkled below them, indifferent to her crisis. "For what it's worth," Evan said quietly, "anyone who knows me knows that interview is garbage. I don't poach other men's wives, and I sure as hell don't start relationships with vulnerable women going through divorces." Candace looked at him. "But we have started something, haven't we? Even if we haven't named it." The words hung between them, honest and dangerous. Evan was quiet for a long moment. Yes, he finally said. From the moment you walked into Jonathan's office, I felt. He stopped, shook his head. But the timing is terrible. You're rebuilding your life. The last thing you need is complications. What if I want complications? Candace. I spent 5 years making myself smaller to fit into someone else's life. I'm done with that. So I need you to be honest with me. She turned to face him fully. What is this? What are we doing? Evan met her gaze, and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes. Responsibility versus desire, propriety versus truth. I'm trying, he said slowly, to be respectful. To give you space to heal without pressure. To not be the rebound guy or the wealthy rescuer in your story. What if I don't need rescuing? What if I just need someone who sees me? I do see you. His voice roughened. I see your brilliance, your strength, the way you light up when you talk about design. I see how you've survived something that would have broken other people. And yes, I want. He stopped himself. What do you want? More than I should. More than is probably wise. Candace's heart hammered against her ribs. She was playing with fire. She knew it. But after 5 years of ice, fire felt like coming home. Evan. Her phone erupted with a call. A known number. She ignored it. It rang again immediately. You should get that, Evan said quietly. Frustrated, Candace answered. Hello. Ms. Vaughan? This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the NYPD. I'm calling about a report filed this afternoon by Lance Harrison. He's claiming you've been harassing him, making threats. I need you to come down to the precinct to answer some questions. The world tilted. What? I haven't contacted him at all. I have a lawyer handling everything. I understand, ma'am, but we need to follow up on all reports. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Say 9 a.m.? Candace felt panic rising. Am I being charged with something? No charges at this time. We just need your statement. Bring your lawyer if you'd like. The call ended. Candace stared at her phone, trying to process. He filed a police report. Against me. For harassment. Evan's expression darkened. Did you contact him? No. Not once. I haven't called, texted, nothing. She pulled up her call log, showed him. See? Every call is from him to me. I haven't initiated contact. He's trying to paint you as unstable, creating a paper trail that supports his narrative. Evan's jaw tightened. This is calculated. It's working. Everyone thinks I'm a gold digger having an affair, and now there's a police report saying I'm harassing him. Candace felt tears of frustration building. How do I fight this? How do I? Her phone buzzed with an email. From an address she didn't recognize. Subject line, you should know the truth about your husband. She opened it. What she saw made her blood run cold. Financial documents. Bank statements. Transfers to offshore accounts. Communications between Lance and his business partners discussing accounting irregularities. And photos, Lance with multiple women, time-stamped over the past 5 years. Not just Tessa. At least 4 others. The email text was brief. I worked for Lance Harrison for 3 years as his assistant. He fired me last week when I asked questions about the finances. He's been embezzling from his firm's clients for at least 2 years. He's also a serial cheater who's very good at covering his tracks. I'm sending this to you because what he's doing to you publicly is wrong. And because I think you can use this in your divorce. He threatened me into silence, but I'm done being silent. The attachments are copies. I kept everything. Good luck. The name on the email, Patricia Keene. Candace's hands shook as she forwarded everything to Simone, then showed Evan. He read through the documents, his expression growing harder with each page. This is massive, he said quietly. If even half of this is true, Lance isn't just a bad husband. He's a criminal. He's been stealing from his clients while playing the respectable executive. Candace felt something shift inside her, the fear transmuting into rage. And now he's trying to destroy me to distract from his own crimes. We take this to the sea. To the D. We destroy him before he destroys me. Candace looked at Evan. I didn't want a war. I just wanted out. But he's left me no choice. Evan studied her face. Are you sure? Because once you go down this road, there's no going back. He'll come at you with everything. He's already coming at me with everything. At least this way, I'm fighting back. Something flickered in Evan's eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. Okay, he said. Then we fight. But not alone. You have resources now, legal, financial me. He paused. Candace, I need to tell you something. About why I'm so invested in this. She waited. My mother stayed in an abusive marriage for 18 years. My father was prominent, respected, appeared perfect to the outside world. Behind closed doors, he was a monster. Emotional, psychological, occasional physical abuse. She tried to leave multiple times. Each time, he'd threatened to take us kids, to ruin her reputation, to make sure she had nothing. Evan's voice was tight with old pain. She finally got out when I was 16. It cost her everything. Her family disowned her for breaking up the marriage. She had to rebuild from absolute zero. Evan, I'm so sorry. She's okay now. Successful. But I watched what it took. And I swore that if I ever had the power to help someone in that situation, I would. He met Candace's eyes. So yes, I'm invested. Not because I think you need saving, but because I know you need someone in your corner who understands that men like Lance only respect power. Candace felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking but opening. Letting in light. Thank you, she whispered. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of revelations settling around them. Then Evan's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned. It's Jonathan. At this hour, he answered. Jonathan? What's? Candace watched Evan's expression change, alarm flooding his features. When? Is anyone hurt? He listened then, we'll be right there. He ended the call and turned to Candace, his face grim. That was Jonathan. Someone broke into his office tonight. Trashed the place. And Candace, he paused. They specifically destroyed every file related to the Bronx project. Every file with your design work on it. The implication was clear as ice water. Lance wasn't just trying to destroy Candace's reputation. He was trying to destroy her future. And he was just getting started. Okay, I need to know, what would you do right now? Go to the police? Fight back publicly? Disappear for a while? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is getting dangerous. And please, if this story has you on the edge of your seat, subscribe and share it. Candace is going to need all of us in her corner for what's coming next. The police precinct at 9 a.m. felt like a different kind of prison. Candace sat in a gray interview room with Simone beside her, giving her statement to Detective Morrison, a tired-looking woman in her 40s who seemed skeptical of everyone equally. So you're saying you never contacted Mr. Harrison after you left? Morrison asked for the third time. Never. He's called me over 200 times. I haven't answered or returned a single call. Candace slid her phone across the table. Check for yourself. Morrison examined the call log, then made notes. And the allegations that you threatened him? Complete fabrication. He has a witness who says you showed up at his office making a scene. Candace's blood went cold. I haven't been anywhere near his office. Who's the witness? I can't disclose that at this time. It's a lie. Candace heard the desperation creeping into her voice. He's lying to make me look unstable. Morrison's expression remained neutral. I have to investigate all claims, Ms. Vaughan. That's my job. When they finally left the precinct 2 hours later, Candace felt scraped raw. He's building a case that you're unhinged, Simone said grimly as they stood on the sidewalk. The harassment report, the public accusations, now a false witness. If he can paint you as mentally unstable, he can argue you're not a credible witness about his affairs, his financial abuse, any of it. So what do? We file a counter-report for his actual harassment. We submit the phone records. And we be very, very careful. Simone paused. Candace, I need to ask, how serious is your relationship with Evan Maddox? We're not, it's not, Candace stopped. We're friends. Colleagues. He's helping with my career. Lance's lawyer is going to argue it's more than that. They're going to use it to paint you as an adulteress, a gold digger, someone who can't be trusted. So I'm supposed to avoid Evan? Avoid the one person who's actually helping me rebuild. I'm saying be smart. Optics matter in divorce cases, especially high-profile ones. Candace's phone buzzed. Amelia, turn on the news. Now. She pulled up a news app with shaking hands. The headline made her stomach drop. Billionaire Evan Maddox under investigation for potential conflicts of interest in city housing contracts. She read frantically. Anonymous allegations that Evan had used improper influence to secure city approvals for his projects. Suggestions of bribery, corruption. The Bronx project specifically mentioned. And buried in the article, a quote from an unnamed source. Maddox has been romantically involved with the lead designer on the project, Candace Vaughan, who is currently in the midst of a messy divorce. Questions about their relationship timeline and whether it influenced contract decisions are emerging. Candace felt the walls closing in. This was Lance. It had to be. Somehow he'd orchestrated this, found a way to not just destroy her but to take down Evan too. She called Evan immediately. I saw it, he said before she could speak. His voice was tight, controlled. My lawyers are already on it. Evan, I'm so sorry. This is because of me. This is because your ex-husband is a vindictive criminal who's panicking. But Candace, he paused and she heard the weight in his silence. My board is advising me to distance myself from you. From the project. They're worried about the publicity. Are you going to? Her voice came out small, terrified. No. But I need you to understand what you're risking by staying associated with me. Your divorce case could be affected. Your reputation. My reputation is already destroyed. Not yet it isn't. But if you stay linked to me while these investigations are happening. He didn't finish the sentence. Candace stood on the sidewalk, people rushing past, the city indifferent to her crisis. She could walk away from Evan, from the project, try to salvage something from her divorce. Or she could fight and risk losing everything. I'm not walking away, she said. Not from you, not from the project. I'm done letting Lance control my life. Candace, I'll call you later. She ended the call before she could hear his response, before the fear in his voice could infect her resolve. Simone was watching her carefully. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Lance has declared war. And I need to hit back harder. With what? The documents from his assistant are helpful, but without her testimony, they're just paper. And she's terrified, she won't go on record. Candace's mind raced. There had to be something, some way to... Her phone rang. A number she recognized from the past, Tessa Moreno. Tessa? He came to my apartment. The young woman's voice shook. Lance. Last night. He was drunk, angry. Demanding to know if I'd talked to you, if I'd said anything to anyone about the affair. Candace's heart hammered. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? He pushed me against the wall. Told me if I said anything public about our relationship, he'd destroy my career. I'm a junior analyst at Goldman, Candace. He has connections everywhere. Tessa was crying now. I'm scared. I wanted to help you, but I can't lose everything. I understand. Don't do anything that puts you at risk. But I wanted you to know, there are others. Other women he was involved with. At least 3 I know about. And one of them, Vanessa something, she worked at his firm. She quit suddenly 6 months ago. I heard rumors it was because Lance got her pregnant and paid her to disappear. Candace's mind went blank with shock. Then she texted Evan, we need to talk. Tonight. There's something I need to tell you. Because if she was going down, she was going down with the truth. And if Lance wanted war, she'd give him war. Even if it cost her everything she'd been trying to build. Real question for you, when someone threatens everything you love, do you back down or burn it all to the ground fighting? Let me know in the comments what you would do in Candace's position. And please, subscribe if you haven't yet. We're heading into the final battle, and you don't want to miss how this ends. Evan's apartment was in a pre-war building on the Upper West Side. Nothing ostentatious, just elegantly restored with crown molding and hardwood floors that creaked with history. He answered the door in jeans and a worn Columbia sweatshirt, looking more human than Candace had ever seen him. "Come in," he said quietly. She walked into the living room and stopped. The walls were covered with photographs, not designer art, but real photos. A black woman with gray hair and Evan's eyes, arms around two teenage boys. The same woman years later, older but radiant, at what looked like a college graduation. Family. History. "That's my mom," Evan said, following her gaze. "And my younger brother. She raised us alone after she left my father. Worked 3 jobs to put us through school. She looks strong." She is. But it took her years to get there. Years of therapy, of learning to trust her own judgment again, of believing she deserved good things. He turned to Candace. "I told you about her earlier because I wanted you to know why I understand. But also because I need you to know, recovery isn't linear. You're going to have setbacks. Moments where you doubt everything." "Like now," Candace whispered. "Like now." She showed him the email, watched his jaw tighten as he read Lance's threat. "He's bluffing," Evan said. "These photos, we were at a business lunch. Anyone can see that." "Can they? Or will they see what Lance tells them to see?" Candace sank onto the couch. "He's been controlling narratives his whole life. He's good at it." Evan sat beside her, careful to maintain space between them. "So what do you want to do?" "I don't know. Simone says we're close to finding the woman Lance allegedly got pregnant. If she'll testify, combined with the financial documents, we could actually destroy him. But," she gestured helplessly, "what if it all backfires? What if I lose everything and he still wins? Then at least you went down fighting instead of disappearing." "Easy to say when it's not your life imploding." "My life is imploding too," Evan said quietly. "That investigation into my contracts? It's real. My board is panicking. 2 major investors have pulled out of projects. I've spent the last 8 hours in meetings with lawyers trying to figure out how Lance orchestrated this." Candace felt guilt crash over her. "I should never have involved you." "Stop." Evan's voice was firm. "I involved myself. Because your vision for the Bronx project was exactly what I've been looking for. Because you're talented and deserving of opportunities. And yes, because I'm attracted to you in a way that probably isn't smart given the circumstances, but I'm also a grown man who makes his own choices." The admission hung in the air between them. "Evan, I'm not asking you for anything," he continued. "I'm just telling you the truth. Because I think you've spent enough years with a man who lied to you. You deserve honesty, even when it's complicated." Candace looked at him, really looked. At the man who'd offered her respect when she'd forgotten what it felt like. Who'd seen her talent when she'd thought it was buried forever. Who was losing investors and facing investigations because he'd chosen to stand beside her. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Of Lance, of losing, of dragging you down with me. But I'm also terrified of what happens if I back down now. Because then he wins. He gets to abuse and manipulate and threaten, and nothing happens to him. While I disappear again." "So don't disappear." "But the cost is worth it," Evan interrupted. "Candace, listen to me. I've spent 20 years building my company. I've made millions. I've had success most people only dream of. And you know what I've learned? None of it matters if you're not living according to your values. My mother taught me that. She lost everything, money, family, security, to get away from my father. But she gained herself. And that was worth more than anything she lost." Candace felt something shift inside her, like tectonic plates realigning. "I want to fight," she said softly. "I want to expose him for exactly what he is. I want other women to see that it's possible to get away from men like Lance. But I can't ask you to sacrifice everything for." "You're not asking. I'm choosing." Evan's eyes held hers. "And when this is over, when Lance is handled and you've had time to heal, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real date, not a business meeting. No crisis, no drama, just 2 people who respect each other seeing if there's something more." Despite everything, Candace felt herself smile. "That sounds terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying? I'm not sure yet." Her phone rang. "Simone." "I found her," the lawyer said without preamble. Vanessa Clark. She worked at Lance's firm for 2 years, left abruptly 7 months ago. And Candace, she's willing to talk. Candace's heart hammered. She's tired of being silent. Lance did get her pregnant. He paid her $200,000 to have an abortion and sign an NDA. But NDAs don't hold up when they're covering up crimes. He kept everything: texts, emails, bank records. She's ready to testify. Why now? Why is she suddenly willing? Because she saw your interview. She saw Lance's response, the way he painted you as unstable. And she said she couldn't watch him do to you what he did to her. Simone paused. We have him, Candace. Between Vanessa's testimony, Patricia's financial documents, and the pattern of abuse we can establish, we can destroy his credibility completely. When? I'm filing an emergency motion with the court tomorrow morning. Full disclosure of Lance's affairs, the financial irregularities, the coercion. His lawyer won't know what hit them. Candace looked at Evan, who was watching her with steady, supportive eyes. Do it, she said into the phone. File everything. Are you sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back. Lance will retaliate with everything he has. I'm sure. I'm done being afraid of him. She ended the call and turned to Evan. It's happening. Tomorrow, the truth comes out. How do you feel? Terrified. Empowered. Like I might throw up. She laughed shakily. All of the above. Evan stood, extended his hand. Come here. I want to show you something. She took his hand, warm, solid, real, and let him lead her to the windows overlooking the city. Lights sparkled in the darkness, millions of lives being lived in the sprawl below. You see all that? Evan said quietly. All those people living their lives, fighting their battles, surviving their own versions of what you're going through? You're not alone, Candace. You never were. You just forgot for a while. She leaned against the window, feeling the cool glass against her forehead. What if we lose? What if Lance finds a way to spin this, and I end up looking like the villain? Then we deal with that when it comes. But right now, in this moment, you're standing in your truth. You're fighting back. You're refusing to be erased. He turned her gently to face him. That matters. Win or lose, that matters. Candace looked up at him, at this man who'd appeared in her life at exactly the moment she needed to remember what respect looked like. What partnership could be. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for believing in me when I'd stopped believing in myself. You did the hard part. You walked away. You chose yourself. He smiled. I'm just grateful I get to witness you remembering how extraordinary you are. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and promise and the fragile hope that maybe, on the other side of this war, there could be something beautiful. Candace's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm watching you. Whatever you're planning, I'm 3 steps ahead. You can't win. She showed it to Evan, watched his expression harden. He's panicking, Evan said. Men like Lance only threaten when they're losing control. Or when they're about to do something dangerous. Which is why you're not going home tonight. You're staying at a hotel, somewhere he doesn't know. Somewhere safe. Evan, I can't ask. You're not asking. I'm insisting. And I'm hiring security. Someone to keep an eye on you until the court hearing. His tone left no room for argument. Lance wants you scared and isolated. We're not giving him that. Candace wanted to protest, to insist she didn't need protecting. But the truth was she was scared. Lance's threats were escalating. And tomorrow, when Simone filed those documents, he was going to explode. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Evan made calls while Candace sat on his couch, processing everything. Within an hour, arrangements were made. A suite at the Greenwich Hotel, a security professional named Jacob, she smiled grimly at the irony, who would keep watch. Ready? Evan asked. Candace looked around his apartment one more time, at the photos of his mother who'd survived and thrived, at the evidence that it was possible to rebuild after devastation. Ready, she said. And for the first time since this war began, she actually believed it. Tomorrow, the truth would come out. Tomorrow, Lance Harrison would finally face consequences. And tomorrow, Candace Vaughan would prove that she wasn't the woman he'd tried to break. She was the woman who'd survived him. And that made all the difference. We're in the home stretch now. What do you think Lance is going to do when he finds out about the court filing? Drop your predictions in the comments. I love seeing your theories. And if you're on the edge of your seat, make sure you're subscribed because the climax is going to be intense. The courtroom was smaller than Candace expected, wood-paneled and institutional, smelling of old paper and tension. She sat beside Simone at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded to keep them from shaking. Across the aisle, Lance sat with his attorney, Gerald Brennan, a silver-haired man known for defending wealthy executives. Lance wore his court face, somber, wounded, the picture of a heartbroken husband trying to understand why his wife had abandoned him. Candace had seen that face 1,000 times. She'd almost believed it once. Not anymore. Judge Patricia Okonkwo entered, a black woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Candace felt a flicker of hope. This judge wouldn't be charmed by Lance's performance. This is a hearing on emergency motions filed by both parties, Judge Okonkwo said, settling behind the bench. Mr. Brennan, I understand your client has allegations of harassment and infidelity against Mrs. Harrison? We do, Your Honor. My client has been subjected to a campaign of harassment and public humiliation by his wife, who abandoned their marriage to pursue a relationship with billionaire Evan Maddox. We have evidence of... And Ms. Rothstein, the judge interrupted, you've filed counter-allegations of infidelity, financial abuse, and intimidation? Simone stood. We have, Your Honor. Along with documentation of embezzlement, coercion of subordinates, and witness tampering. Lance's lawyer went very still. Judge Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. Those are serious allegations. I hope you can substantiate them. We can, Your Honor. We have multiple witnesses prepared to testify. What happened over the next 3 hours was a systematic dismantling of Lance Harrison's carefully constructed facade. Vanessa Clark testified first. Poised and professional, she described in devastating detail how Lance had pursued her when she joined his firm, how he'd promised to leave his wife, how he'd pressured her when she got pregnant. He told me if I didn't terminate the pregnancy, he'd destroy my career, Vanessa said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. He made me sign an NDA, paid me to disappear and stay silent. She provided bank records showing the $200,000 transfer. Text messages where Lance alternated between romantic promises and vicious threats. Lance's expression remained neutral, but Candace saw the muscle jumping in his jaw. Patricia Keene, Lance's former assistant, testified next via video call. She'd relocated to California, terrified of retribution. She walked through the financial irregularities she'd discovered, the offshore accounts, the client funds that had been reallocated. When I asked Mr. Harrison about the discrepancies, he told me I was mistaken, Patricia said. When I persisted, he fired me and threatened to blacklist me from the industry if I spoke to anyone about what I'd seen. She provided emails, spreadsheets, a paper trail that even Lance's expensive lawyer couldn't explain away. Then Tessa Moreno appeared. Candace hadn't known she was coming. The young woman looked terrified but determined. I was involved with Mr. Harrison for 8 months, she testified. He told me his marriage was over in all but name, that he was only staying for appearances. When Mrs. Harrison left him, he came to my apartment drunk and threatening. He pushed me against a wall and told me if I ever spoke about our affair, he'd make sure I never worked in finance again. She had photos, bruises on her arm from where Lance had grabbed her. A recording from her apartment's security camera showing Lance at her door, visibly intoxicated, aggressive. By the time the testimony concluded, Lance looked like a man watching his empire crumble. His lawyer attempted damage control. Your Honor, while my client clearly made mistakes in his personal life, the allegations of financial impropriety are supported by substantial evidence. Judge Okonkwo interrupted. Mr. Brennan, I'm inclined to grant Ms. Rothstein's motion for full financial disclosure and forensic accounting of your client's business dealings. I'm also granting the restraining order against Mr. Harrison. He is to have no contact with Mrs. Harrison or any of the witnesses who testified today. Lance's lawyer started to object, but Judge Okonkwo held up a hand. Furthermore, I'm forwarding copies of this testimony and evidence to the District Attorney's Office and the SEC for potential criminal investigation. This court does not take kindly to perjury, witness intimidation, or financial crimes. Candace watched Lance's face drain of color. As for the divorce proceedings, the judge continued, given the pattern of infidelity, financial abuse, and coercive control established today, I'm granting Mrs. Harrison's petition for divorce on grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment. We'll schedule a hearing on equitable distribution, but I want both parties to know I will not reward Mr. Harrison's behavior with a favorable settlement. The gavel came down. It was over. Candace sat frozen, unable to process that it had actually happened, that the truth had come out, that Lance was finally facing consequences. Simone squeezed her hand. "You did it," she whispered. "You won." Across the aisle, Lance stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. His eyes found Candace's, and the rage in them was volcanic. "This isn't over," he said, loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear. "You think you've won? You've destroyed my life, my reputation." "Mr. Harrison," Judge Okonkwo's voice cut like a blade. "You will not address the plaintiff. You have a restraining order. Violate it and you'll be held in contempt." "She's a liar." Lance's composure shattered completely. Everything she said, everything these women said, it's coordinated. She planned this with Maddox. Mr. Harrison. His lawyer grabbed his arm. "Stop talking. Now." But Lance was beyond reason, beyond strategy. "You were nothing when I met you," he hissed at Candace. "A nobody with delusions of talent. I gave you everything, a home, a life, status, and this is how you repay me." Candace stood slowly. For 5 years, she'd let Lance's words define her reality. "Not anymore. You gave me a cage," she said quietly. "I'm giving myself freedom." "Bailiff," Judge Okonkwo said sharply, "please escort Mr. Harrison from the courtroom. Mr. Brennan, control your client or I'll add charges." As the bailiff approached, Lance's expression shifted, from rage to something more calculating, more dangerous. "This isn't over, Candace," he said softly. "You can't humiliate me like this and just walk away. You're going to regret." "That's enough." The bailiff took Lance's arm, began leading him toward the exit. Candace watched him go, the man she'd been married to for 5 years, and felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no residual love. Just relief that he was finally out of her life. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered, press, mostly, who'd gotten wind of the hearing. Simone guided Candace through a side exit where Evan waited with a car. "How did it go?" he asked as soon as she was inside. "We won." Candace's voice sounded strange to her own ears, like she couldn't quite believe it. Everything came out. The affairs, the embezzlement, all of it. The judge granted the divorce and referred Lance for criminal investigation. Evan's smile was fierce and proud. "I knew you could do it. I couldn't have without Simone. Without you. Without those women brave enough to testify." "But you're the one who walked away," Evan said quietly. "You're the one who started this by choosing yourself. Everything else followed from that choice." The car pulled away from the courthouse, and Candace watched the building disappear in the rearview mirror. Somewhere inside, Lance was probably strategizing with his lawyer, planning his next move. But for the first time in 5 years, Candace wasn't thinking about Lance's next move. She was thinking about her own. Her phone buzzed. "Amelia, I saw the news. You did it. Come over tonight. I'm cooking everything you love and we're celebrating properly." Then Jonathan heard about the hearing. "The Bronx project is yours if you still want it. Your vision, your design. Let's build something beautiful." Then a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Vaughan, this is Rebecca Wilson. I'd love to do a follow-up interview about today's hearing and what it means for other women in abusive marriages. Let me know if you're interested." Opportunities. Friendship. A future that was finally, truly hers. "What are you thinking?" Evan asked. Candace looked at him. This man who'd stood beside her when it would have been easier to walk away, who'd risked his own reputation to help her find justice. I'm thinking that 3 weeks ago I left my marriage with one suitcase and no idea who I was anymore. And today I faced down the man who tried to erase me and won. She smiled. I'm thinking I want to celebrate. With friends. With people who actually see me. I'd like to be there for that. If you want me there. I do. She paused. And Evan? After everything calms down, after the divorce is final and the dust settles, I'd like to take you up on that dinner. The real date. No crisis, no drama. His smile transformed his entire face. I'll hold you to that. The car pulled up to the Greenwich Hotel where Candace had been staying. As she reached for the door handle, her phone rang one more time. Simone. Turn on the news, the lawyer said urgently. Candace pulled up a news app. The headline made her heart stop. Investment executive Lance Harrison arrested for assault after courthouse confrontation. She read frantically. After being escorted from the courtroom, Lance had confronted Tessa Moreno in the courthouse parking garage. Security footage showed him grabbing her, shoving her against a car. Courthouse security had intervened and arrested him. Tessa was shaken but unharmed. Lance was in custody, facing assault charges on top of everything else. He completely unraveled, Simone said. His lawyer has already resigned. Lance is on his own now, facing criminal charges without representation. Candace, it's really over. He can't hurt you anymore. Candace stared at her phone, processing. Lance Harrison, the powerful, controlled, immaculate executive who'd spent 5 years making her feel small, had self-destructed in a courthouse parking garage. The man who tried to destroy her had destroyed himself. Are you okay? Evan asked softly. I think I am, Candace said slowly. For the first time in 5 years, I actually am. And as the car pulled away, as the city opened up before her full of possibility and promise, Candace Vaughan finally understood what freedom felt like. It felt like coming home to herself. I need to hear from you. What do you think should happen to Lance? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story has touched you, inspired you, or made you think about your own journey, please subscribe and share it. Stories like Candace's need to be told. 6 months later. The rooftop garden was Candace's favorite part of the design. She stood in the early June sunshine, watching children from the surrounding Bronx neighborhood run through the space she'd created, raised garden beds bursting with vegetables, a covered pavilion for community gatherings, murals painted by local artists splashing color across every wall. The affordable housing project was 3 weeks from completion. 4 buildings arranged around a central courtyard, exactly as she'd sketched on that napkin 6 months ago. Spaces designed not for efficiency but for dignity. For community. For the radical idea that everyone deserved beauty in their lives, regardless of income. It's perfect, Jonathan said, coming to stand beside her. Even better than the renderings. It's proof, Candace said softly, that the woman I used to be is still in here. I just had to remember how to let her out. Her phone buzzed. A text from Simone. It's official. Divorce finalized. You're free. Candace stared at the words, waiting for the emotion to hit. Relief? Sadness? Fear? Instead, she felt light. Untethered in the best way. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind. Lance had been arrested 3 times, once for the courthouse assault on Tessa, once for violating the restraining order by showing up drunk at Amelia's apartment, and finally on federal charges related to the embezzlement scheme Patricia had exposed. His trial was scheduled for next month. His legal team had approached Simone twice trying to negotiate a settlement that would keep Candace from testifying. She'd refused both times. Some truths needed to be spoken in open court. Lance's firm had fired him. His assets had been frozen pending investigation. The man who'd spent 5 years making Candace feel worthless had lost everything. His career, his reputation, his freedom. And Candace had built everything. After the court hearing, interview requests had flooded in. She'd been selective, only speaking to platforms that focused on women's empowerment and domestic abuse awareness. Rebecca Wilson's follow-up interview had gone viral, 6 million views, thousands of comments from women sharing their own stories of leaving, surviving, rebuilding. Candace had become, accidentally, a voice for women finding their way out of marriages that had diminished them. But more importantly, she'd become an architect again. The Bronx project had led to 2 more commissions, a community center in Newark and a library redesign in Philadelphia. Her calendar was booked solid for the next 18 months. Architectural Digest had featured her work. She'd hired 2 junior designers and was mentoring them the way she wished someone had mentored her. She'd bought her own apartment in Fort Greene, nothing extravagant, just a sunny 2-bedroom with hardwood floors and enough room for a drafting table by the windows. It was hers. Chosen by her, decorated in colors she loved, filled with furniture that reflected who she actually was. She'd never been happier. "Candace!" Amelia's voice called from the pavilion. "Your date's here." Her best friend appeared, grinning like a fool, with Evan trailing behind her looking slightly embarrassed. "I told her I could wait downstairs," he said, shooting Amelia a look. "And miss seeing Candace in her element?" "Absolutely not." Amelia squeezed Candace's arm. "I'm heading out. You 2 kids have fun." She disappeared with a wink, leaving Candace and Evan alone in the garden. "Hi," Candace said, suddenly shy despite the fact that they'd been dating for 3 months. Dating. The word still felt strange and wonderful. After the divorce proceedings had settled, after Candace had taken time to heal and remember who she was without a man defining her, she'd called Evan. "I'm ready for that dinner. If the offer still stands." It absolutely does. They'd taken it slow. Coffee dates, long walks through Brooklyn, conversations that stretched for hours. Evan had been patient, never pushing, letting Candace set the pace. Their first kiss had happened on a rainy April evening outside her apartment, and it had felt like the world shifting into focus. "You ready?" Evan asked now, offering his hand. "For what?" "Your surprise. Come on." She let him lead her down to the street where a car waited. They drove to Manhattan, to a building in Chelsea she didn't recognize. Evan guided her inside and up to a converted loft space, soaring ceilings, exposed brick, walls of windows. And in the center of the room, a drafting table, a conference area, filing cabinets, everything needed for a professional architecture office. Candace turned to Evan, confused. "It's yours," he said quietly. "If you want it. You've been working from your apartment, but you're taking on bigger projects, hiring staff. You need real office space." "Evan, I can't afford." "It's already paid for. 2-year lease in your name. Consider it a very late wedding present." At her expression, he quickly added, "Or an investment in a designer I believe in. Or just, let me do this, Candace. Please. You've worked so hard to rebuild. Let me help you build bigger." Candace walked through the space, imagining her team here, clients visiting, design charrettes happening around the conference table. Her name on the door, Candace Vaughan, architect. She turned to find Evan watching her with an expression that made her heart skip. "What?" she asked. She'd taken her voice back and used it to help others find theirs. She'd taken her broken pieces and built something more beautiful than what had existed before. 3 months later, the opening ceremony for the Bronx housing project happened on a perfect September afternoon. 500 people packed the courtyard, residents, community leaders, press, city officials. Candace stood at the podium, looking out at the faces, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "A year ago," she said, her voice steady and clear, "I was invisible. I'd made myself small to fit into someone else's vision of who I should be. I'd forgotten that I had value, talent, something to offer the world. This project," she gestured to the buildings around them, "is proof that we can rebuild. That we can take what's broken and create something whole. That we deserve spaces designed with dignity, with beauty, with the understanding that our environments shape our sense of possibility. To every woman who's ever felt invisible, you're not. Your voice matters. Your vision matters. And it's never too late to choose yourself." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, as the sun set over the Bronx and children played in the garden she'd designed, Candace found Evan watching her from across the courtyard. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His expression said everything. "I see you. I celebrate you. I love you." And for Candace Vaughan, survivor, architect, woman who'd walked away from everything to find herself, that was more than enough. That was everything. Amelia appeared with champagne. To my best friend, who's officially a badass. Candace laughed, clinked glasses. To second chances. To new beginnings. To building the life you actually want instead of accepting the one you're given. And to love that doesn't require you to disappear, Evan added softly. They drank to that. And somewhere in a federal prison, Lance Harrison sat in a cell, finally facing the consequences of a lifetime of cruelty. While in the Bronx, in a garden designed with love and vision and the radical belief that everyone deserves beauty, Candace Vaughan stood in the life she'd built from nothing. And she was free. Finally, completely, joyfully free. Thank you for going on this journey with Candace. If her story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. And make sure you're subscribed. I'll be bringing you more stories of resilience, redemption, and the kind of love that heals. Where are you watching from? What part of Candace's journey resonated most with you? I read every comment, and your stories matter to me. Remember, it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to rebuild. And you are never, ever invisible. Until next time, keep fighting for the life you deserve.